Okay, I think y'all can hear me now. I think I had myself on mute. Good afternoon, good people. This is Ashley Nicole. Welcome back to the Practical Life. Again, good afternoon. I hope everything is going well for you on this. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday? Girl, it's Tuesday. My days are mixed together. Today I have a pretty busy day. Um, so I'm going to go ahead. This might be a shorter live, but I just wanted to again make sure that I came to talk to you all about a particular subject that has been brought to my attention lately, and just wanted to talk about it a little bit. But before I get into that, just want you all to know this channel is all about mental health. This is where you can get your questions answered for yourself or someone else. Or if you are a person who's trying to kind of navigate your career, trying to figure out, what is the next step, trying to strategize, or trying to get yourself to the next level as far as your career or managing your mental health in the workplace, I am the person for you. All of my information will be in the description box. But today, as you can tell based on the title, we are talking about um, something that could be related to the recent, topics that we've been talking about, and it is toxic guilt. Now, the reason why um I brought this up, like I said, there have been it's been brought to my attention, and a lot of people experience this, y'all, where, and it could go a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of look at guilt. You can categorize it in different ways. But today we're going to be talking about toxic guilt. And you might look at it based on my conversation today, from the lens of, kind of being that person that you are, you're feeling like you're unable to live your life fully because you feel guilty about your own life. For example, if you are feeling like you're doing, well, you may not be like a wealthy person or anything like that, but you found yourself in a better situation than what you were in. And maybe some of the people around you haven't found their way yet. So you feel a little bit guilty about the things that you are able to do, you know, um, things that you're able to experience, and they're not able to kind of get there yet. And so you feel a little guilty about it. And then also from the lens of survivor's remorse, you have those instances or those stories where somebody has passed, and this goes into the conversation of grief and loss, and a lot of people feel survivor's remorse, right? It's almost like, why is it that they had the opportunity, or why were they saved, right, and other people were taken? So we'll get into it, but I hope you all are doing well. Thank you all to all who have subscribed thus far. Join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers. If you have not subscribed yet, you can definitely support this channel by liking, commenting, and again, subscribing to this channel. I hope everything that I bring here is, giving value. This is the purpose of this channel, making sure that we provide education, and, we empower others related to mental health. And we're making sure that mental health is not a taboo subject. So guilt is definitely in that realm of mental health. A lot of people go to therapy, of course, because they feel guilty about things. Sometimes I have, clients who are a little bit older. Once you get to the point where you are in your 50s, in your 60s, and things like that, you find people who start to think about, and I think this happens in general, right? You start to think about your life as a whole, and not that you don't have, that many years left or anything like that. It's just that at that age, you start thinking about what you did in your life, things that you could have done differently, if you've done everything that you set out to do. And sometimes when they're thinking about those things, questions come up of, why didn't I do these things? Or I wished I had have done these things. So, at that point, those are some of the questions that might come up in your life. But when we talk about toxic guilt, right? If you're a person who's feeling responsible for everyone around you, um, if you value the feelings of other people more than your own, or if you have unrealistic expectations for yourself, then you may be a person that might experience or may be experiencing toxic guilt. And so, what is it, right? It's just basically feeling responsible for things that are not in your control or beyond your control. And a lot of people who have toxic guilt, they take too much responsibility for how other people feel. Think about that for a moment. And y'all, I have my coffee. I have iced coffee today, y'all. Iced coffee is I don't think I probably didn't drink iced coffee until I was much older. I never understood why people I was like, why are they drinking iced coffee? I could never get into it until one day I tried it. I said, oh, okay, I get it now. But this is a long time ago, but yeah, every once in a while I'll drink iced coffee. Um, so yeah, so taking too much responsibility for how other people feel. And to be honest, if you think about it, what other people feel, that don't have nothing to do with you. What other people think, that doesn't have anything to do with you. You know how people say, you hear all the time, and it's true. What people think about you, what people feel about you, how people react to what you did, what you said, they don't have anything to do with you, right? But when you talk about toxic guilt, seeing someone else struggle, and you may believe that you should be doing something to fix what they're going through, right? And so if you see yourself as that type of person, you probably have or know some of the people in your life, right, that do that. They're always trying to fix the situation, always trying to make things better for someone else. Um, and I think it's a difference between having toxic guilt and just being a person who wants to help, because you do have those people, right? All of us have it in us to where we want to help someone else if we see that they're having a challenging time. But sometimes there are situations where that nobody can fix but that person that's in that situation, if that makes any sense, right? And if you think about it, if you are always the person who's trying to fix it, and you might not even think that you are doing that, right? You may not uh think specifically, okay, I have to fix it. It's just that if you see the situation or you see someone going through something, you're doing something to step in, whether that be talking to them, offering a listening ear, giving them advice of what they could do, even though you've never even been in a situation. You're trying to give advice of what they could do, give them resources, um, calling on other people to try to help, right? And if you think about it, if you continue to be that person and you continue to do those things, you will leave yourself in a vulnerable state. And if you watch any of my other lives or videos, then you know my opinion on being in a vulnerable state, right? You could be so vulnerable that that's when people start to take advantage of what you are offering. So then it's like, They're always going to come to you for that listening ear. They're always going to come to you to for you to kind of rescue, or because they know that you're not going to say no, because that's what you've always done. And so then, and I'll get into this, if you don't know how to say no and they come to you, then that's when you will find yourself going down that road of starting to feel guilty, because it's like, okay, well, I have always helped them. Now they are coming to me for help, like, and I really can't do anything. And then you start to feel bad, right? But that's going to empty, you're emptying yourself, right? Because now other people need you, but you're not kind of taking care of yourself. And that'll lead to you being exhausted, right? And if you're exhausted, where do you leave room to, again, take care of yourself? So, again, what is toxic guilt? Taking too much responsibility for how other people feel and feeling responsible for things that are beyond your control. So if you are feeling this way, what we can imagine what it could result in, right? But some of the things are feeling inadequate. Because in that same example, if you're always trying to help and then all of a sudden you can't, or maybe you don't have the time to help or something like that, then you're feeling like, okay, well, a little bit of inadequacy about not being able to do that. You start yourself, you start to feel like you're not good enough, right? Starting to feel resentment to people that trigger you, to feel guilty. And sometimes you may start projecting your feelings on other people, because the way that you're starting to feel about the guilt, and the guilt is kind of consuming you, you may hold it in. And so then you may start to project your feelings on other people. It also will result to, again, this example that I'm speaking of, trying to please people, and we all know where that will lead you. And just as the saying goes, you can't please everybody. People are always going to find something that you could have done better, that you could have said that you didn't say. um, they're always going to have some type of critique or criticism about what you're doing, right? But if you are, trying to, if you're experiencing toxic guilt, right? It kind of results in you trying to please other people, because you don't want to kind of feel the feels. You don't want to feel that way. So you instead try to please other people. Let me know if this is making sense to someone, because I have experienced this myself. I know a lot of other people who are or have experienced it, and it's definitely, not a good feeling. You know what I mean? And especially when, in my first example of a person feeling like this, a good example too is that, you know how some people, they may be or feel like they're the black sheep of the family. And I just heard someone talk about how they have siblings, right? They have siblings, and they have extended family, but they feel like that they are the black sheep. Why? Because their family treated them a certain way, because they were the first one to go to college. They were the first one in the family to um, get like a good paying job. Seemingly, it appeared that they were the first person in the family to kind of have it together. And so they felt like their family kind of treated them a different way, or didn't treat them the same, because they had done all of that. Well, that's where someone could feel a lot of guilt. But guilt for what? Guilt for going to school? Like, and it is there are a lot of families that treat people this way in their family, y'all. Like, and maybe, I'm sure, well, I can't say sure because some family members' child, but most of the time it may not be their intention to do that, but inadvertently you are treating them a certain way because you perceive them to be a certain way because they have accomplished these things and other people in the family did not, right? Although they may have been pushing them to go to school, although they may have, said, make sure you get your degree and all of this. But then when they get it, it's like you treat them this way because now the perception is, oh, you think you are there because you've been to school and you have a degree. So then this person could start to feel guilty about accomplishing the things that they've accomplished, right? Because it's like when you know better, you do better. Okay, I've been to school, I have a degree, now I'm going to be able to live a different type of life than my family did, right? And have a different type of life for myself. But then they feel guilty because it's like now they don't have that sense of support from their family. They don't have a lot of support now because the family then put them as the black sheep because like, oh, you think you are there because you got a degree, right? So then they start to feel guilty about it. And then if they start to feel too much guilt, of course, like I said, it becomes toxic. And then if you have these thoughts always in the back of your head, think about it. You're not really able to live a full life because you always thinking like, why is it that I'm able to do these things, but my family is not able to do these things? I hope this making sense to somebody, y'all. So now, guilt by itself is a normal feeling. Anytime somebody, we do something bad or whatever, we feel guilty about stuff. But being toxic is a whole different thing, and it could go on for so long. And look at the recent events that we've been talking about, right? Remember this story about Terica Ellis in this Tim Norman saga, right? She was in the courtroom rocking back and forth, right? I can only imagine that she feels guilt, right? She feels guilt about what she could have did, what she should have did, what she should have said, what she could have said, how things could have been different. Um, but then, if you're looking at it from the perspective of what Terica did not know, she didn't know what the whole plan was, right? Terica didn't couldn't fathom that something like that was going to happen, right? It doesn't negate that she would still feel guilty about it because she played a part in it, even though she didn't know what specifically was going to happen. So then you can imagine that she would have some guilt that could turn toxic because of something that was beyond her control. If it's true that nobody really knew what was going to happen, they just kind of played their part, right? Right? And that guilt is going to eat her up, right? Now, the other one, Travell, he probably had some guilt too. Even though you may be a person of the streets, even though he claims to be was on drugs and things like this, the fact remains that you did what you did, right? And it's going to be hard to live with that, and you're going to feel some type of guilt as well. Everybody in the situation. Tim, I'm sure you feel some type of guilt just simply on the fact that he is not going to be able to live out or complete whatever goal that he had in mind, whether that was to allegedly get some money, whether that was to have more businesses, whatever his overall plan was, that's not going to come to fruition at this time, right? So now that may be a different type of, Like you feel guilty because you didn't do it the way that you was supposed to do it, if that makes any sense, right? So a lot of people in that particular story will feel, feel some kind of guilt about, this person not being here anymore. So, but now, those who regularly suffer from toxic guilt can often identify with these particular traits. The first one could be being afraid to take risks, right? Just in the example of somebody going to school and now your family, you the black sheep of the family, you don't have any support, now people in your family feel like they can't relate to you all because you've been to school and you have an education. This happens all the time, y'all. This happens all the time. They are afraid to take risks. When I said that they may not want to live their life fully or feel bad about it. They feel bad about living their life. What kind of life is that? um, they're afraid to take risks. Again, they're afraid to live their full life. They may censor themselves, right? They're less and you don't want to be too impulsive, but you want to have a little bit of spontaneity in your life, right? They may not be able to do that because they're thinking about what someone else uh how someone else may perceive what they're doing or have something to say about what they're doing. um they may change their behavior because they're seeking approval from other people. They worry a lot. Guilt, especially toxic guilt, will cause you to have anxiety. It'll cause you to have anxiety. It'll cause you to have symptoms of depression as well, because again, you're less likely thinking of yourself and always thinking about other people. They're trying to replay events in their head about the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And this goes back to people who are a little bit older. I'm telling you, when you get to 50, 60, in those ages, you start to think about all these things that happened in your life and what you could have done, how you could have done things differently. If you have kids, you start to look at your kids and see how they turned out and start to think about, well, what could I have done differently for this one not to do this and that, right? Right? Again, taking responsibility for how other people are responding, how other people are reacting, for other people's emotions. That's guilt. They may often try to read the minds of others. If I do this, what are they going to think? If I say that, how are they going to respond? And if they get into this kind of like this particular area of guilt, then they start to take life so serious. These are people again who are really not spontaneous. Um you could kind of take the example of Raisa King, the lady who unalived the boss, allegedly, the boss and the property manager in Atlanta. She took her job so seriously, y'all. You can really tell that her profession was her life, right? When I did a little bit of research, there was no, it didn't look like she had a big social network. um you saw were things about her profession and her going to conferences, speaking at conferences, right? And so she was just wound up in that, right? And so now I can only imagine how this particular young lady is. She probably has some guilt too. Why? Because there's a different way that you could have handled that, right? Because again, you're going back to thinking about the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? Now you feel guilty because, like, dang, I shouldn't have done that. And it's not just a regular, normal guilt, it is, what have I done, right? Let me know what y'all think in the chat. Let me know what y'all think. So how do we overcome feeling guilty about things, right? How does a mother overcome feeling guilty about the mistakes that their child has done as an adult? Because I know I talked about this before. When your kids become adults, like, you raise them in a certain way, right? You raise them to know right from wrong, you teach them the right things and this and that. But when they get to a certain age, they have their own morals, values, they make their own decisions, and sometimes those decisions excuse me, could be poor decisions. And also, your kids' personality is not your personality. They are their own being. And I talk about this all the time. And some people, I'm sure that they would disagree, but you got to think about it. When people say, and now I'm getting ready to get on my tangent, when people say kids are gifts, it's truly what it means. They really are a gift, right? And if you really think about it, they are not ours, right? We have been given, and this is my opinion, we have been given the opportunity to care for them and to nurture them and to raise them, but they are not ours. They are their own people. They're their own person. So when they become adults, right, they have their own morals, they have their own values. They look at life differently from their own lens because now they're on their own, right? So when they make these decisions, these are not your decisions. You will hope that when they do make certain decisions, that you're that little voice in their head to say, now ah, you know how your parents raised you. You know this is not right. You shouldn't be doing this. Now, wait a minute, take a step back. Think about what you're doing. Think about what you're getting ready to do. Now, wait a minute. Think about a different perspective, right? Before they do something. You will hope that that voice is there, but sometimes the voice might not be there. And they're going to make decisions on their own. It might be a poor decision. And guess who have to live with that? Them, not you. So this is going back to Miss Robbie. Miss Robbie cannot take on what Tim has done in his life. Miss Robbie cannot take on the guilt of the decisions that her son has made, right? Now, doesn't mean that other people aren't going to try to make her take it on. But this is where again therapy comes in, because she'll have to learn how to manage kind of like that outside noise. If she knows I had no hand in this, these are not the decisions I made, right? Of course, there's still going to probably be some things where she thinks shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? What she should have done, what she could have done, what she could have said, actions she could have took and things like that. But when it comes down to it, the ultimate decision she did not make, right? So she's going to have to learn how to deal with that outside noise who's trying to make her take that on. Right? So how do you escape it? So you have to learn how to forgive yourself. Firstly, you got to forgive yourself for the shoulda, coulda, woulda. You got to forgive yourself for um, for being the person that you kind of like forgive others too, right? For them kind of placing this on you to say, okay, for the example of people going to college, right? They people sometimes don't know what they do. And You can't take on other people's feelings and thoughts again about what you're doing or how your life turned out, because everybody makes choices, right? The second thing is to reframe your thoughts about what has happened or the guilt that you might feel, right? Well, what is reframing? So, reframing is just another way of looking at a situation. It's commonly used in CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. A lot of people who start therapy will be going for cognitive behavioral therapy, because in that particular modality we're trying to change and we're kind of analyzing your thoughts, your patterns, your behaviors, right, and how to kind of change those patterns. And so when you reframe, it's a technique that is used in cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's just another way to look at the situation, or looking at it to see what are some other possible reasons that I might be feeling this way. And I always tell people, when I talked about toxic guilt and it leading to anxiety, right? A lot of people say, well, I have anxiety because of this, or I feel guilty because of this, or this is the reason why. And sometimes you've got to separate perception from reality. So, one thing I would ask is also is that what evidence, anytime I tell anybody this, anytime you feel anxiety, anytime you feel overwhelmed, anytime you're having a challenge, not a problem, a challenge. That's a great example of a reframe. Instead of you saying I have a problem, you reframe it to say I have a challenge. It's a different way. Problem and challenge there mean two different things. You know what I mean? When you have a challenge, that is you're empowering yourself to do something different and to overcome the challenge. And you have a problem, the way that you think about a problem, or what we know about what a problem is that you can't change it, or it's so big that there's nothing that could help that problem. Like you can't help it, right? But I always ask people when they say, oh, well, such and such did this, or this is why, what evidence do you have? Or when people talk negatively about themselves, well, I just can't lose weight, you know, or what, oh no, I just can't exercise, or no, I don't see myself um going to therapy, or I don't see myself doing this or that, etc. Well, what evidence do you have that you can't do something, right? And when you really think about it, you don't have any evidence. So so if you don't have any evidence, then you can't say that for sure. You can't say it for sure. Or if you say, if I would have done this, or if I would have said that, or if I in Tim's saga, like Miss Robbie, right? Or even Andre's mom, she could say that too. Well, if I would have did this, well, what evidence do you have that if you would have done X, Y, and Z, this would have happened? Because you don't know, right? And again, when people say, oh, I can't do this, well, what evidence do you have that you can't? Right? And so a lot of times there is no evidence. There is no evidence. And then too, when people are dealing with, and I always mostly speak of anxiety and depression, y'all, because those are the most common mental health challenges. People having anxiety or people having depression. And a lot of times people most people have not even been diagnosed with having anxiety or depression. They are just saying that they have it. And that goes to another thing. When you affirming something and you're saying you have it, you're gonna get it. That's why I say, you know what? We're not gonna say that. You're experiencing these symptoms because And it's partly because of what they're seeing, what they're reading, what they're hearing, right? Mostly on this thing on the social media, and they say, well, yeah, I have depression. Okay, well, what evidence do you have that says that you have depression? What evidence do you have that points to a diagnosis of anxiety? Because most people don't know what's in the diagnostic statistical manual, right? And so it's just based on what you've kind of heard. But if you don't have any evidence, then you can't clearly say that this is what it is, or what it could have been, or what it could be. So that's another way to kind of overcome guilt, right? When you're thinking about, again, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, or if you could have just done this or that, well, what evidence do you have? Or just try to reframe whatever negative thought that you're having. And again, reframing is just looking at the situation in another way. Or what are other possible reasons this could have happened? Um, right now, also, when you're thinking about the situation or negative thoughts about something, your part of the reframing, could be is looking at it like there are other possible explanations for whatever you're thinking. So I hope I was able to kind of explain that for you all. The next thing, high school, how are you? I hope your day is going well. Um, Another thing, you are not responsible for other people's reactions. Okay? Whatever they think about you, whatever criticism they have about you, what they think you could have done, should have done, could have said, you're not responsible for that. Those are their thoughts and feelings, right? So that's another way to kind of overcome feeling guilty. Then another thing is to make sure that you develop some type of self love. And when I say self love, I'm coming from the perspective of engaging in self care. And a lot of people don't do this. It is so important. When you engage in self care, whether it be, whatever it is, whatever activity allows you to be able to get in touch with yourself and to learn yourself more, to care for yourself a little bit more, right? Whether that is meditating, meditation is probably the biggest one and the one of the better ones, right? Especially if you um, having challenges with anxiety, are feeling overwhelmed. If you are a very, very busy person, meditation is probably the best thing to start with, because meditation is going to allow you to clear your mind of the noise, right? It's going to allow you to become a little bit more present in what you're doing, whatever activity you're doing, and really living in the moment, right? Now, it will take some practice, but meditation, some people think, oh, I have to do it for 30 minutes. No, you can start off with a couple minutes a day. If you're working, you're on your computer all the time, just take a little break. Take 2 minutes to just sit still, you know, sit in silence. And that's how you can kind of start meditation. But you have to engage in some type of self care. When you engage in self care, that is showing that you respect yourself, right? That you're listening to your body. You're listening to what your body needs. You're listening to what your mind needs, right? And so you are really becoming a little bit more clear about what you want, what you like, what you don't, what you're going to tolerate and what you're not, right? So engage in some type of self care, because then you'll start to realize when you're dealing with guilt, right? You feel guilty about something. Um, that that it's really not on you, right? Um, the last thing I have is setting boundaries. Y'all, this is a big one because so many of us cannot say no. Why is that? Why can't we say no? And it could be the smallest things. It's like you really, somebody asks you to do something, you really don't want to do it, but you don't say no. Why is it that we feel like we have to engage? And the only thing I could think of is because we don't want to let other people down. But where does that come from? You know, at some point in your life, you're going to be in situations where you're going to be let down. That's life. And I find this a lot of times with myself, I find that I do this with my kids. I'll say no, but then I'll be thinking about it and I'll say, well, they do, well, they didn't, I didn't let them do it the last time, or it could be with anything, y'all. It could be going to a friend's birthday party, or it could be anything. And I'll say no, and then I'll say, oh, well, they didn't go, and then I'll change my mind. Or I may not change my mind. I may not tell them I changed my mind, but in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, well, maybe that's too harsh, or maybe that's because my whole thing is I want, and let me know if y'all parents have gone through this. um because I want my kids to have experiences that not necessarily that I didn't have, but I don't want them to lack. And I think that's a lot of parents, right? I don't want them to ever say they didn't have, or they didn't do, or, and I'm not saying I give whatever they ask for, they give me, because that is definitely not the truth. but but most of the time, that is that's what it is. But you know sometimes I think too it could come from what we didn't have, and what mostly what parents say, that we want to give our children what we didn't have. um but it is okay, and even in other situations, work, with your spouse, with your boyfriend or girlfriend, um with your friends, social relationships, like it is okay to say no. Because I always think like, okay, well, if I say no, what is the worst that could happen? What is the worst that could happen? They're just gonna say okay, or then they'll be upset. And if they're upset, that ain't got nothing to do with me. But I do understand that guilt could come in, especially when it comes to family. If you're saying no to family, if you are saying no to your parents, right? This is a big challenge for a lot of people. Lately I've had a lot of people reach out to me about uh trying to deal with relationships that they have with their parents, right? And there are so many parents out there, y'all, that feel like when the child becomes older, that they owe them because they have taken care of them, they've nurtured them. Right, school. They've nurtured them, they put them through school. But my idea, and let me know y'all if I'm wrong. Like I sometimes when I'm thinking this stuff, I'm like, Ashley, okay, you a different type of person. Because and then complete transparency, like I started to feel bad too. I'm like, Ashley, you shouldn't feel that way. But I feel like that's a parent's job. A parent is supposed to push you through school. A parent is supposed to support you through school. A parent is supposed to nurture you. A parent is supposed to buy you things that you need, and sometimes things that you want. This is a parent's job. So then when the child becomes older, it is not my job to take care of the parents. That's backwards. Kids should not have to be responsible for when they become an adult. They should not have to be responsible for a parent's well-being, for a parent's emotional stability, um for to be a listening ear when parents are struggling with their relationship. um they shouldn't have to be there as far as finances, monetarily. This is why when I talk about my other lives about the differences between, and I'm not saying all the time, you can have those examples that are outliers, of course. Right, you can always find one or two people or whatever that this, is not what you're saying, but the majority, right? Parents feel like, okay, when they become older, if I ask them for something or if I need this or that, then they are supposed to do it. That's not true, in my opinion, because no matter how old your kids get, they're always your kids. So what does that mean? They're always going to need advice. They may at some point need financial help, right? When they have their own kids, they're going to need your help and your wisdom and your teachings about what to do and how to care for a baby and things like that, right? They may need your advice when it comes to marriage and the expectations and things like that, just to give them continued knowledge about things. But if an adult child has to step in to make sure that they are the emotional, provide emotional stability, be a soundboard to the parents, provide financial support to the parents, look after the parents' affairs, making sure, if the roles are reversed, then who will that person go to? Let me know if y'all haven't ever experienced that or if you all know someone, because you know it's hard. I can imagine that it is hard to say no, especially to parents, right? And if you really have emotionally unstable parents, then that's when they start to play, mind games and things like that. But that's a whole nother story, right? Where they pull the silent treatment on their kids and things like that. Very unhealthy things that happen. But we have to learn how to say no, and be okay with saying it. Because again, the worst that could happen is that people are going to say, "Oh, okay," or they're going to be upset. And if they upset, then that's their problem. It don't have anything to do with you. Now, if you are a person that is just starting out with learning how to say no, maybe you can say, okay, I would really like to do that for you. I would really like to engage in this conversation, but I'm not able to do it right now. Can I call you at this time? Or can we talk tomorrow? Or, you know, I'm not going to be able to do it this month. Um, or again, just flat out, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. And you don't even, when you say no, no is no. You don't have to explain it. Some people, when we say no because you don't even have to put because behind it. All you got to do is say, no, I'm not able to do it. And that's it. And after you say the no, you don't say anything else. You pause and allow them to fill in the words. And they can say whatever they're going to say. And you say, oh, okay. And that's it. But again, I understand it's hard to get to that point. It really, really is. And, it's a journey. It's a journey, but it will definitely help you with getting over guilt that you have for trying to help others or being responsible for others' emotions and their reactions to things. So that's what I have today, y'all. I wanted to come to talk about that. Like I said, it came to my attention and somebody had a question about it. So I said, well, let me go ahead and address it on the live. It definitely can relate to the Tim Norman story because all of them, I would imagine, have some type of guilt about the situation, right? But again, this is important. This is why we need to make sure that we engage in therapy and talk to someone and get the help that we need. So I hope this was helpful for you all. I hope you found value in this live. Make sure that you like the live. Make sure that you subscribe. Thank you all whom have subscribed thus far. We are really growing. I'm so excited and I'm happy about the growth that we have. This is something that I really like to do. Like I said, sometimes if y'all don't see me, y'all might see this avatar because it's about what? Consistency. School says, as a parent of adult daughters, I learned the hard way how to say no. Yes, yes. And it's hard, it's hard to say no to your kid. It really, really is. But it's kind of like you have to think about it, like I was saying earlier, school, that our kids are truly a gift and they are really not ours when you truly think about it. They're their own people. And so when they become adults, they have to sometimes figure it out on their own. And sometimes you may have to give them small opportunities as kids to figure it out on their own because you are not always going to be there. You're not always going to be there, right? And it may not even be passing or anything like that. It's just that you're not going to be with them in every situation that they're in. So they got to know what to do. They got to know what to do. So even sometimes with my kids, they're little kids. So one of them, they know how to, put their own clothes on and all this stuff, right? And sometimes when they don't feel like it, because you can tell what it is when they don't feel like it. Oh, I need you to I need you to button my shirt. No, you don't. You know how to button that shirt up. And your little butt gonna sit right there until you button it up. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't button when you do it one way, then you try a different way. You figure out a different way to do it. And so then what is that teaching them, right? When one way doesn't work, I got to try it another way because this same way that I'm doing it is not working. So I got to figure out a different way to do it, right? So that's why I say nah, and it take everything out of me, school. It take everything out of me not to go in there and button that shirt up. Because you might be rushing that morning. You might be trying to do something else, get the lunches together, break, or whatever it might be. And you say, goodness gracious, that little bit of time, it might put you back because then when you go in there to button the shirt up, you're going to see something else you got to do. And usually for mine is, oh, you didn't make the bed up? Oh, no, you got to make that bed up. So then you look up, it's 15 minutes later. So I say, no, I'm going to continue what I'm doing, and you are going to figure out how to button that shirt up because I know you can do it. And then once they figure it out, they've tried 5 different ways, and on their sixth way, they figured it out. Baby, they be so happy. Mom, guess what? I did it. I did it. Yes, you did it. How did you do that? Wow, you are such a problem solver. So that's how they learn. Because if you continue to do for them and do for them and do for them, then when they get older, if it does become a time where they have to, and this is especially too for kids who are the only child, right? They really in a in a pickle because God forbid something happened to the parents, right? Or you have parents who have an only child, who have one child, but they had the child when they were much, much older, right? So by the time the child becomes an adult, they are in their older age, you know what I'm saying? And now it's really, if something really does happen to the parents, it's only one person that can help them. So all these years, if you've been stepping in for them, trying to figure out the situation for them, stepping in when they have financial issues, making excuses for the kids, rationalizing their behavior. When you come to that point, you're not going to have anybody to care for you because they're not going to know how to do it. They're not going to know what to do. Those are the kids, they're going to break down. They're going to break down, or they're going to step out of the situation. They're going to remove themselves because it's too overwhelming. And you end up, and this is not all cases, but it end up being in the nursing home because somebody got to take care of them. And it can't be them because they can't do it. They can't take it. So you have got to prepare your kids. Like I said, when they're little, you give them little examples, little things, little lessons, and those things stick with them. They really do. We think they don't, they really do. But again, when you become an adult, you have your own, you make your own decisions and stuff. But most of the time, the kids know, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, what's right and what's wrong. They just make their own, decisions. And some people have the personality of they got to go through it to realize that it wasn't a good decision. Like they really don't step back beforehand and say, okay, let me look at this view, let me look at it from this vantage point, right? No, I better not do that. They just do it, and then they say, dog, I shouldn't have done it. So some people got to go through it, and they have to learn that lesson. But so yeah, so hopefully, I've given you all some tips on how many was there, like five, I think, yeah, of how to overcome toxic guilt and really not to put that on yourself. And like I said, it can relate to Tim Norman's story because everybody in that situation, I would think, has feel some type of guilt of what could have been said, should have been said, how it could have been, things could have been done differently, and things like that, right? From the rooter to the tutor. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We are growing here. I'm so happy about it. So excited to be coming back to you all with more lives. And like I said, if you don't see my face here, you see this avatar, then you already know what it's about. Consistency. Okay. So like I said, I have a busy afternoon. I'm going to get to it. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. I appreciate you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.